Every single morning, before your feet even touch the floor, something is already fighting for your peace. Your mind wakes up before your body does. And the first thing waiting for you is the quiet battle no one else sees. But Psalm 27 is not just a comforting verse for this battle. It is a spiritual weapon, a shield, a declaration, a reminder of who stands beside you when everything else feels like it's falling apart. David didn't write Psalm 27 in a peaceful season. He wasn't sitting on a throne with a cup of wine in his hand, humming songs of confidence. No, he wrote it while surrounded by threats, hunted by Saul, betrayed by people he trusted, and constantly on the move. Yet in the middle of that chaos, he said, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear?" Psalm 27, verse 1. That wasn't arrogance. It wasn't blind positivity. It was courage under fire. It was faith sharpened by pressure. Because when life becomes unstable, Psalm 27 reminds you of a truth your fear hopes you forget. Your strength never came from what you see. It comes from who is with you. Fear talks, and it talks early. Before you even step out of bed, fear loves to whisper, "You're not enough. Nothing will change. God isn't listening. You're going to fail again." Fear is loud. But David teaches us something powerful. You don't silence fear by pretending it isn't there. You silence fear by speaking truth louder. That's why he wrote, "Though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear." Psalm 27, verse 3. That's not denial. That's defiance. David refused to let fear define his reality. He refused to let circumstances decide his confidence. He chose faith as his focus. And that choice reshaped his entire perspective. And this is the secret of Psalm 27 that most people miss. Psalm 27 is not just about protection. It's about perception. Because the moment you stop obsessing over everything coming against you and start paying attention to the God living within you, fear loses its grip. Anxiety loses its authority. And darkness loses its foothold. Waiting on God's timing. One of the hardest lines in the entire psalm is also the one we need most. Wait for the Lord. Be strong. Take heart. And wait for the Lord. Psalm 27:14. Waiting feels like nothing is happening. Waiting feels like unanswered prayers and delayed breakthroughs. Waiting feels like being forgotten. But waiting is not punishment. It is preparation. God does some of his greatest work in what looks like silence. David didn't write these words from a place of comfort. He wasn't waiting in a palace. He waited in caves, in uncertainty, in fear. He waited while being chased. He waited while feeling forgotten. He waited when the promise seemed far away. Yet he still said, "I will wait for the Lord." Because faith isn't proven when the breakthrough arrives. Faith is proven in the waiting before it arrives. Some of you are in that exact season right now. You've prayed consistently. You've cried quietly. You've done everything right. But heaven feels silent. Listen closely. God's silence is not God's absence. He's building something inside you that the blessing will require later. Strength, patience, endurance, discernment, unshakable faith. When God delays something, it's never because you're not worthy. It's because He is preparing you to carry what you asked for without breaking under the weight of it. Confidence in the storm. Another truth David reveals is this: peace doesn't come when the storm ends. Peace comes when God steps into the middle of the storm with you. David said, "For in the day of trouble, He will keep me safe in His dwelling." Psalm 27, verse 5. David understood something we often forget. God doesn't always remove the battle. Sometimes He strengthens you to walk through it untouched. You don't need everything around you to be calm in order to carry peace within you. Because peace is not the absence of trouble. Peace is the presence of trust. The next time anxiety rises, don't let it lead you. Don't let it dictate your mood or your day. Respond to it with faith. Say it with authority. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? Say it again. Say it until the fear inside you loses energy. Say it until your mind shifts. Say it until the atmosphere around you changes. That's not repetition. That's reprogramming your spirit to believe again. The power of God's presence. There is something beautifully hidden inside Psalm 27 that many overlook. David doesn't just ask for safety. He doesn't just ask for victory. He asks for something deeper, something more intimate. He says, "One thing I ask, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord." Psalm 27, verse 4. He doesn't ask for revenge against Saul. He doesn't beg for an easy life. He asks for closeness. Because David understood that peace does not come from having control. Peace comes from connection with God. When you stay close to God, the things that used to overwhelm you start to lose their power. Your heart becomes quieter. Your thoughts become clearer. Your reactions become calmer. Your faith becomes steadier. And suddenly, you're not reacting to fear, you're resting in faith. So before you step into your day, don't just ask God to fix everything around you. Ask Him to fill everything within you. Because when the presence of God goes before you, everything around you begins to change. Light over darkness. Psalm 27 verse 6 says, "Then my head will be exalted above the enemies who surround me. At His sacred tent I will sacrifice with shouts of joy. I will sing and make music to the Lord." This isn't just a verse about victory. It's a verse about visibility, about elevation, about God lifting you into a place where darkness can no longer reach you. When David said, "My head will be lifted above my enemies," he wasn't talking about ego or pride. He was talking about perspective. Because when God raises your head, He raises your vision. He lifts you to a level where what once terrified you can no longer touch you. Your enemies may surround you: stress, fear, doubt, betrayal, anxiety. But David reminds you that God surrounds your enemies. And when God steps in, He doesn't just protect you, He elevates you. That's what light over darkness truly means in this passage. Not just escaping the storm, but rising above it. Not just surviving the attack, but standing higher because of it. And look at what David does next. He worships. "I will sacrifice with shouts of joy." Joy becomes his weapon. Praise becomes his shield. Worship becomes his warfare. Because darkness loses power when you worship in the middle of the battle. When you give God praise before the victory, you tell the enemy, "You cannot control my spirit. You cannot control my sound. You cannot control my joy." Worship lifts the atmosphere. Worship lifts your mind. Worship lifts your spirit above the reach of fear. That's why the verse ends with, "I will sing and make music to the Lord." Praise is not a reaction, it's a strategy. It's what pushes back the darkness. It's what shifts the spiritual climate around you. It's what brings light into every shadow trying to suffocate you. Psalm 27 verse 6 teaches us this powerful truth. When God lifts your head, darkness loses its hold. When you lift your voice, darkness loses its place. So if you feel surrounded today, lift your head, lift your voice, lift your worship. Because God is lifting you above everything that's trying to pull you down.